Look, we all love Nintendo's games.
Nintendo, you did it again.
When I pick up that controller and I actually get in the game, somehow something grips me there for hours.
No, because you guys know I absolutely love Nintendo so much.
They're family friendly, they're unique, and at the end of the day, they're just fun.
Who'd you marry?
The Bowser.
You married Bowser?
He talking this so nice, it to me.
But Nintendo's recent behavior has been pretty shady. They recently ended up in the news for canceling a Smash Bros. Tournament for what seems like no reason. But is this an isolated incident or a sign of something bigger? Here's a hint. It's the second one.
Hey Nintendo, I believe it was a former CEO of yours who once said,
"What's wrong with you?"
How's it going, ProGuides fam? This is Tia Johns from Ven, and today we're taking a look back at Nintendo's controversial past. Let's get right into it. It actually starts as early back as their first video game, Donkey Kong. Everybody knows how influential Donkey Kong is. It basically invented the platformer. The thing is though, Donkey Kong wasn't a solo effort. Nowadays, we think of Shigeru Miyamoto making it all by himself. And to be fair, a lot of it is still because of him. All of the ideas that ended up in the final game are his. But going from ideas to a finished game is a difficult and long process. See, Miyamoto didn't actually have any programming experience, so Nintendo had to contract out development of Donkey Kong to another company. They were called Ikegami Tsushinki, and they're not a small company either. They did the exact same thing for other companies like Sega, and they're still around today.
It's Donkey Kong, the arcade sensation, and now you can play it at home.
Hang on, sweetheart, I'm gonna save ya!
Donkey Kong was a massive hit, obviously. Demand of the game was way more than the supply. Ikegami had the exclusive rights to make the physical copies of Donkey Kong because of their contract, but the game was selling way more than any arcade game. Nintendo wanted even more machines than they could make, so Nintendo just decided to make the physical copies themselves. Understandably, Ikegami wasn't too happy about this. They didn't want to work with Nintendo anymore. But Miyamoto had tons of ideas for a sequel.
I got Donkey Kong, and now I'll get you too, Junior.
I'm Donkey Kong Jr., and that's my papa. I'm trying to save him, and boy, do I need your help.
Which would later become Donkey Kong Jr. Nintendo didn't own the code for the original Donkey Kong, though. So, Nintendo decided to hire someone else. They weren't paid to just code the new game, though. They were instead told to reverse engineer the code of Donkey Kong. This meant they wouldn't have to pay Ikegami at all to make a sequel. Ikegami sued Nintendo over this and won. And more recently, Nintendo's behavior has gotten even worse. In 2014, Nintendo went extremely aggressive on YouTube copyright strikes. They took 100% of the ad revenue off channels over the most basic things. If you used a sound effect from one of their games, too bad. They weren't really concerned, but the backlash was ridiculous because there are so many Nintendo-only YouTubers and their entire income had shrunk to zero.
Nintendo has started claiming ad revenue on user-created YouTube videos featuring its games, according to reports from the YouTube users themselves.
Fans hated this so much that Nintendo worked on an updated version in 2015 called the Nintendo's Creators Program. Essentially, anybody who was making YouTube videos using Nintendo-related pieces of media could sign up for it. People like Let's Players, creators of walkthroughs, and even speedrunners. It sounds good, right? Well, it was basically just an excuse for Nintendo to police YouTube channels while taking money from them. People had no trouble making money before Nintendo got involved, and nobody asked for their help either. And on top of that, Nintendo was still taking a cut out of all of the money these channels were making. It was around 30 to 40%, and they specified they could increase it at any time they wanted. The only good news to come out of the program was that it died in December 2018. But since it ran so long, it meant there was a point where you could get copyright claimed by Nintendo, which would then demonetize you by YouTube, and you would have no revenue at all. And the worst part about this was that Nintendo also had the final say on what you could upload. That's right, if they didn't like something you said, you weren't allowed to show it, pretty much destroying every form of an objective opinion on YouTube. This doesn't mean it affected only gaming journalism like IGN or Kotaku. Even someone like the Game Grumps saying they didn't like something about a game would have had their video rejected. Oh, by the way, when the program died, that didn't change anything. You might know the channel Gilva Center on YouTube. It rips and uploads music from all kinds of games so you can listen to them easily whenever you want. There are thousands of channels like these, and they all get tons of views. But Nintendo still regularly copy strikes them, but then doesn't provide an official way to listen to the music either. At least Capcom and Sega have put their music on Spotify. Why hasn't Nintendo?
Company that defined me as a gamer, that made my childhood. Seeing the business decisions is like a freaking punch in the balls.
This bizarre behavior is at the core of being a Nintendo fan. They seem to actively make choices specifically tailored to annoy their communities. In 2014, they released Tomodachi Life for the 3DS. It was an island simulator, and you could make your own city and the characters in it. Sort of like The Sims, but for an entire island. It featured marriage between characters, but it was only heterosexual. So Nintendo fans signed a petition asking the company to include same-sex relationships. And Nintendo said no. In an official statement, they said Nintendo never intended to make any form of social commentary with the release of Tomodachi Life. Yeah, a pretty bad response. And obviously fans were upset by this. Nintendo apologized almost immediately. Still didn't add it to the game though.
Then watch as they rap, rock, eat donuts, and fall in love.
Another area where Nintendo's constantly dropping the ball is the fan game community. In 2016, the Game Awards had a category called Best Fan Creation. 2 specific games nominated in it were called Pokemon Uranium and AM2R. Uranium took 9 years to make and was as polished as an official Pokemon game. AM2R was a fan remake of Metroid 2, was built over 10 years, and was the same level of quality. Nintendo's response to this was to send a DMCA request to both of these games and take them down. They weren't allowed to be shown at the Game Awards because of this, and they can't even legally be distributed anymore. This is just one example, by the way. People have been making fan games for decades, and Nintendo has always shut them down. They completely destroy these projects before they even get off the ground. They're legally allowed to, but it's just a massive sign of disrespect. These games were made as labors of love for Nintendo's work. You can tell what Nintendo thinks of these developers by how they treat them. They're dealt with by lawyers and never contacted directly by anyone at Nintendo, and all they get sent is a vague threat. Compare this to how a company like Capcom deals with it. While Capcom was developing a Resident Evil 2 remake privately, some fans were working on their own version publicly, and it looked genuinely good. So Capcom flew those fans out to meet the team behind Resident Evil 2 Remake. They showed them exclusive builds of the game, asked them for advice, and most importantly, treated them with respect. It says everything about them that they put those fans in the credits of Resident Evil 2 Remake. Nintendo could even go the Sonic Mania route. Hire talented fans in your audience to make official games. Everybody would benefit, but they still choose not to. Sometimes it seems like the fans care about Nintendo's history more than they do themselves. In 2018, Nintendo sued 2 sites that were hosting ROMs of games online. They're obviously legally allowed to do this, but it puts game preservation in a dangerous state. If you think this is about just piracy, break it down a little. Think about how influential something like the first Star Wars movies is. And hardly anyone today has actually seen the original theatrical cut because of George Lucas interfering with the originals. Those versions are basically lost. It wouldn't hurt as much if Nintendo offered a better solution. They've introduced a new virtual console for every platform since the Wii, and it seems to be getting worse over time. The Switch is their worst attempt yet. It only has a handful of games and only from 2 console generations. Take the Earthbound and Mother games. They're infamously hard to play now officially. It took forever just to get a release of Earthbound, and it was back in 2013, exclusively on the Wii U. This was the first time Earthbound was even officially released in Europe. As soon as Earthbound was available, it instantly became one of the best sellers on the eShop. Without that kind of access and preservation, we wouldn't even have games like Undertale. I mean, Toby Fox literally got his start in game development by making Earthbound ROM hacks. If Nintendo had their way, Undertale would never have been made. And now Sans is an official Smash game. The Switch in general seems to be Nintendo's worst era for controversies, but maybe it's because it's far more successful than the Wii U ever was. Super Mario 3D All-Stars recently came out for the Switch, and it has to be one of the laziest games Nintendo's ever made. Mario 64 especially stands out because it's at a much lower quality than Sunshine or Galaxy. Its resolution is only 720p, while the other two are 1080. It's still 4x3, so has black bars, and the entire game is still locked at 30 FPS. Compare this to what the fans are doing. They wrote their own version of Mario 64, decompiling it legally, and then made that code open source. They were literally guessing how the game codes because they were such big fans of how influential it was. It took a lot of work to do this alone, and some fans found a way to make a PC port of the game using it. It solved all those problems above and even added extra features like cheats and an analog camera. And because it's open source, some dedicated fans have even ported that version of Mario 64 to the Switch. So there really is no reason why the official version has to be so bad, since they already have access to the game's code. It seems like Nintendo knows its collections is terrible too. They slapped on a timer, so if you don't buy it by March 31st, 2021, it just won't be on sale anymore. And it's not because of the pandemic and how that affected making physical copies of games. The digital versions are being taken off the eShop on the same day. And that leaves Super Smash Bros.
I'm freaking out, dude. Shine.
Armada has taken Evo for the first time!
Nintendo's relationship with Smash has always been rocky at best. You might not know it, but the reason there's a competitive community for the game at all is because of the fans. It was never actually supported by Nintendo until almost 2 decades in. And many of them still play the second Smash Bros. Game Melee for a variety of reasons. In 2013, the fighting game tournament EVO was looking for a final game to add to its lineup. To put it into context, EVO is like the Super Bowl for fighting games. They decided to host a donation drive, and the community that raised the most money for charity would be featured at EVO. Melee raised over $90,000 for breast cancer research and was accepted. Fans of Melee would tell you, this tournament is probably the reason people still talk about Melee today. It introduced the game to a whole new audience.
And there it is! The up smash and wobbles is gonna go down. 3-1 Mango has come all the way back.
But a few days before the tournament started, Nintendo tried to block streaming of the event so nobody could watch it. And later it came out, Nintendo was trying to shut down the Melee tournament altogether.
Nintendo has taken it away from the fans, literally saying that EVO can hold the tournament, but you can't actually host the games. This is freaking ridiculous. They can't stream now. Like, I don't even understand. Like, how the hell does a giant corporation get its head so far up its freaking ass that they can't even think of the people that put up so much money for them to actually get what they want?
The backlash from the community was so extreme that in less than 5 hours after announcing they were canceling the tournament, Nintendo released a public apology. They needed the Smash community when the Wii U was failing, but refused to support it now because the Switch is thriving.
Plan B.
So you want to cancel your lunch with President Barack Obama to host a Smash Brothers Invitational tournament?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, that settles it. Nintendo's hosting its first ever Smash Brothers Invitational tournament in LA during E3 at the Nokia Theater. And I guess I'll call the president and tell him to stay home that day?
On November 19th, 2020, Nintendo legally canceled an online Smash tournament called the Big House. It was normally held annually and in person, but had resorted to online because of the pandemic. This sparked another massive response from the community, which is still playing out. And it created the hashtag #FreeMelee in support against Nintendo. People aren't even asking for official help anymore. They just want Nintendo to leave Smash alone. But it gets even worse. Nintendo runs an official Splatoon 2 tournament called the North American Open, and its most recent version of this tournament was held in December 2020. According to Splatoon commentator Slimy, 30% of the top teams that entered used some reference to Melee in their name to spread awareness to what was happening. A really cool move by them. What was Nintendo's response? They canceled the live stream for the finals of the tournament. They blamed it on executional challenges, but it wasn't canceled by anyone actually involved with running the tournament. It came directly from Nintendo. They specifically said nobody else could stream that tournament as well. Their intention is pretty clear. If you've been following Nintendo's social media for a while, you probably know of the YouTuber Desmond Etika Amafa. He was a massive fan of Nintendo and tragically took his life in June 2019. It was attributed to his poor mental health at the time. A fan of his called Captain Alex wanted to do something to honor his memory. In August 2019, he started a crowdfunding campaign to make JoyCon controllers in Etika's memory. I know what you're thinking, but it was actually really tastefully done. They were called Etikons and had a design that was both respectful and loved by his fans. All of the money made was also going towards the JED Foundation, a charity that tries to spread mental health awareness and create programs to help with it. By the end of the campaign, Captain Alex had raised over $10,000 for charity, and this was only from roughly 300 JoyCons. He made 200 more to sell on Etsy because the demand was so high. But before he could, Nintendo caught wind of it. They got their lawyers to send him a cease and desist. Again, this is completely legal, but it's not a morally good move. Those 200 JoyCons he made for Etsy had to be binned, and he can't legally restock or sell them anymore. All of this happened between September and December 2019, but it's recently been brought up again by loads of fans, because it represents what Nintendo's become today. A company focused so much on profit that they're willing to crush a few fans to get their way. Let's be clear though, all of these criticisms come from a place of love. We want Nintendo to stop treating us so badly because we enjoy what they make so much. This video hasn't even covered Joy-Con Drift, Nintendo Switch Online, or Amiibos, and there's so much more.
But all of these examples have one thing in common. Nintendo always got too greedy, but people like you and me kept pushing back against them. And when that pushback was big enough, they had to listen. But with their biggest sales yet on the Switch, what do you think it'll take for Nintendo to permanently change their business practices? Let us know down below. Thank you so much, ProGuides fam. I'm Tia Johns from Venn, and I will see you next time.